Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Jared here, and today we are going to be ranking all of Martin Scorsese's movies. This is something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now, not just ranking Martin Scorsese's movies, but looking at many different directors' filmographies, because I find it so fascinating looking at a filmmaker's entire catalog of films, and it allows me to experience so many different films and look at filmmakers and see just how varied their filmography actually was. And Martin Scorsese definitely has a much broader filmography than most people would really think about. He is very versatile in the types of pictures that he makes. He can make a comedy, he can make a drama, he can obviously make a really good gangster film. Now, before we get started, I will lay out some groundwork. I am not including any of his documentaries, his short films, or any films that he worked on with different directors, such as New York Stories. You're not going to be seeing that. I am just looking at his 26 narrative films. And I also want you to know that this is a very personal list. Everybody's list is going to be different, and I have a lot of differing opinions on some of his films, even ones that are beloved by many people. So just let that sink in, that this is my personal list. But with that said, let's get into the ranking. So at the bottom of my list, at number 26, I'm putting New York, New York. I don't really care for this film much. I think it is overlong, messy, and tries to do just too much. It tries to do the impossible by combining the sensibilities of the 1940s and 50s musical with the sensibilities of 70s style filmmaking. And I just don't think it blends very well. I think that it's a very unlikable film, especially with Robert De Niro's character, who is completely despicable and unlikable. And it's really hard for me to really watch and care for that character. It's also just messy in the fact that most of this movie was improv. Martin Scorsese himself was really dealing with a drug addiction during this movie. A lot of things going against this film, and the improv overall really took its toll on Liza Minnelli, who I think does a fantastic job in this movie, but the rest of the movie just falls kind of flat and is just overlong. At number 25, I have Who's That Knocking at My Door. This is Martin Scorsese's first movie, and as such, it kind of feels much like a student film, or at least Martin Scorsese trying to test out the waters with what he can do in narrative filmmaking. And in that way, it's a nice experiment. I just don't think it cohesively works together as a whole. It has a lot of ideas in it, but no cohesion overall. It's not all that interesting. It's interesting in that it is the first movie that he ever made, and I think that is why, for one, it is worth watching over something like New York, New York. And it also gave us Harvey Keitel, and he is pretty solid in this movie. At number 24, we have Boxcar Bertha, which I feel a lot of people write it off simply because it is a exploitation film, a low-budget movie produced by Roger Corman. But I still think that Martin Scorsese is able to give us a whole lot in this movie. There's some beautiful shots in this movie, just a lot of dirt and grime, and there's a sweatiness to the look and feel of the movie. I think that it has some solid performances, especially from Barbara Hershey, who plays the titular character, Boxcar Bertha. It is overall a fun time, I think. It's just not very memorable in terms of the rest of Scorsese's filmography. At number 23, we have Kundun, which is part of Martin Scorsese's unofficial religious trilogy. And when it comes to this movie, I ultimately find it very dull and boring. I think that the problem lies specifically in the screenplay. It tells the story of the 14th Dalai Lama, but adds no personality to him. It creates a character that is told he is perfect, has already reached perfection, and has just no reason to have any kind of conflict at all. It's just not all that interesting to watch. I think the ideas are interesting and the filmmaking is beautiful. I think that Roger Deakins' cinematography is fantastic and the soundtrack is really good. But there's just not a whole lot of passion, I feel like, in this movie. It's just overall a very dull experience. Number 22, we have After Hours, which is a movie. When I first watched this, I ranked this a whole lot higher in my initial viewing. But on this second watch through, I just wasn't really into it. It felt like it took too long to get going, and once it did get going, it was fun for the most part. There are some very dark comedic moments throughout this film. I just didn't really vibe with the main character that much. I don't really care for him a whole lot. I think that this is probably a movie that just depends on my mood and when I see it. So at number 21, I'm gonna put The Color of Money. I think The Color of Money is a fine film. I think it is solidly directed. It doesn't really have much of a directorial voice. This doesn't really feel like a Martin Scorsese film. But that said, I still think it is very well made. The pool scenes in particular are a lot of fun. I have not seen the original film that this is a sequel to, The Hustler. I would very much like to watch that movie one of these days. But I think the performances are all really good. We have a young Tom Cruise here who's cocky as usual. It's really a showcase of actor Paul Newman. This is a very good performance from him, and it is worth seeing it for his performance alone. I think he really sells the movie, but it's still a really good film, and I can see why people might rank it a little higher. So at number 20, I know people are probably going to be very mad at me, but I'm putting The Departed. I know The Departed, for many, is ranked up there as one of Martin Scorsese's best films, and it is a very good film. There's a lot to love in this movie. I just, like with the previous film, feel like any director could have made this movie. I don't think it has the stamp that really makes it a Martin Scorsese movie, aside for it being a gangster film. I think the performances are really, really good, especially from Leo DiCaprio and Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon. Those three are very phenomenal together, and it has some great twists towards the end of the movie. I just think it's overlong, and I don't really connect with it on an emotional level like I do with a lot of other Scorsese films. So that's why it ranks this low. At number 19, we have Shutter Island. I really love the first hour of Shutter Island. I thought this was phenomenal in its first half. Leo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo are very solid in this. All the performances throughout the movie is really, really good. And it has just a really good mystery to it. I like this kind of story, and the time period really works for it. I think Martin Scorsese did a really good job in this instance, and I think you can see a little bit of his directorial voice here. However, I think that after about the hour and a half mark, I think the movie kind of overstays its welcome. I think it's a bit too long, and when the twist eventually comes, it's not really a twist that is going to make you rethink everything. I've seen this twist many times before. I think ultimately what Shutter Island shows is it's a director doing a genre that he hasn't really delved into a whole lot, and showing that he really doesn't have much of anything new to say within that genre. Number 18, we have Bringing Out the Dead. I think this is a really great film in so many ways. It's a slower film than people might be accustomed to. It drags in some places. However, I think that Nick Cage's performance is really, really good, and it makes you get that feeling like, oh man, like I just need to sleep. You're kind of like the main character in this movie who is just wanting to finally rest. He is fed up with the world, and the ending to this movie is one of the most satisfying and poignant endings to a Martin Scorsese film. I think it's a very underappreciated film in his filmography, and a great screenplay by Paul Schrader. And number 17, this is another film that a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy for ranking it this low, but I'm going to be putting Raging Bull here. Raging Bull is a good film. There is no doubt about that. It is a beautiful looking film. The cinematography makes it feel like a film straight out of the 1940s and 50s, which is the time period it takes place in. The performances across the board are completely solid. Robert De Niro gives maybe one of his finest performances, and the boxing scenes are incredible to watch. I love the first half of this movie, and just think that the second half of the movie, which is in many ways the more interesting half of the movie, it's just not all that fascinating to me. I found myself rather bored watching it, but it's still good nonetheless. But I hate saying that it's not one of my favorites. It's not my go-to. So at number 16, we have Hugo. Hugo feels like the closest to Martin Scorsese's heart in that it focuses in on early filmmaking and film preservation. And when the film focuses on those moments in particular, especially with the films of Georges Méliès, the movie shines. However, I think that this is a movie that is a children's movie made for adults, because I think that any child that would watch this movie would be completely bored with it. I think that the more child elements of the film are completely fine and kind of superfluous to the rest of the film. I think it's really well made. It's beautiful to look at, but I think what makes it stand out for me are the scenes about film preservation, about Georges Méliès. Everything else is pretty much just fluff. At number 15, I have Gangs of New York. This is a really good film that was compromised. It was cut down from, I think, originally like a 3.5 hour picture into 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is still very long. However, I think that the film just has so much going on and has so much to say about the American experience, the immigrant experience, and also putting in this revenge plot throughout. I think the stuff with the butcher is phenomenal. Some of the performances are really good, and it's overall a good time. It's just very long and takes a while to really get going. And even when it gets going, it feels like it meanders quite a bit. But it is a good movie nonetheless, and a wonderful soundtrack. And I will defend that U2 song at the end of the movie. I think it really works for what this movie was trying to convey. In fact, I think that this movie holds up narratively better today than it did back then. At number 14, I have The King of Comedy, which is one of the most stressful movies I have ever watched. It's an uncomfortable watch. I think Robert De Niro gives one of his most sinister performances in this. Rupert Pupkin is just so stressful to watch. He's not very likable. You watch him and you just want to take your eyes off the screen because of how stressful it is. It's embarrassing in some ways, and I mean that as a compliment to the film. It's a film that makes you uncomfortable, and that's what makes it a hard movie to sit down and rewatch. It's a great movie, but it's not one of Scorsese's movies that I'm just ready to rewatch over and over, just because I hate the feeling that I have while watching it. At number 13, this was a movie that really surprised me. When I first watched this movie, I kind of wrote it off. But on rewatch, I really fell in love with it, and that's Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets. This is a very personal film to him, based on some of his own experiences living in Little Italy, and it just shows a lot of early Scorsese that he would eventually kind of morph into his own. I think that it's a beautiful looking film and just a really solid kind of, it's a weird hangout kind of movie, and it feels like a little bit of a redo of what he did in Who's That Knocking at My Door, but just done a whole lot better. It's fun, it's got really good performances in it, and it showcases Robert De Niro in one of his very early roles, and it's just one that really was infectious while watching it. I think that this movie needs more appreciation overall in terms of Scorsese's filmography. I feel like it doesn't get as much love because it comes so early into his career. At number 12, we have Casino. I used to think that Casino was just Goodfellas 2.0 and a lesser Goodfellas. And in some ways, it still is, but I think it's a movie that can stand on its own. It's a 3-hour epic, but it feels so short. It has phenomenal performances from many of its leads, and I think Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone in particular really do steal the show. I think that it does have a problem in its almost endless narration, though. Although it is entertaining with that narration, it's just crazy that it takes about 40 minutes for this movie to have a scene where two people sit down and talk to each other, because the rest of it is just narration. It's a lot of information being thrown at you, but it's all entertaining nonetheless. At number 11, I'm putting Cape Fear. I love this movie. It's Martin Scorsese doing an Alfred Hitchcock style film. It feels like you're watching something like Rear Window or Vertigo, and I just love that about it. And I also think that it gives one of the scariest performances from Robert De Niro. He is terrifying as Max Cady in this, and it's a sinister film, it's a dark film, and it feels very commercial for Martin Scorsese. It's just a really solid thriller. I need to rewatch the original film. This is a remake of, but as it stands, this is still a great film nonetheless. Endlessly entertaining. At number 10, we have The Irishman, which is a 3.5-hour gangster epic that feels like the last great gangster film in so many ways. And it's definitely Martin Scorsese dealing with his own mortality. I think this is a very reflective film, and because of that, the pacing is a whole lot slower than you might be used to with a particular Scorsese picture. However, I think that it's at the benefit of telling this story of morality and just growing over. Robert De Niro gives one of his finest performances that I've ever seen from him. It's a very poignant and sad film, especially in the final moments of the movie, which I think really makes you think of the film completely differently. At number 9, I have Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. This is a movie that so many people have slept on, and I beg you guys, please do not sleep on Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And I feel like many people just kind of forget about it because it is, again, early Scorsese, and it's not one of his gangster movies. It's not one of his more well-known movies, but it's a very great drama with a solid and phenomenal performance from Ellen Burstyn and Chris Christopherson as well. And it's also a deeply feminist picture in a lot of ways. It's really a liberating story about a mother finally being able to break free of the chains that have binded her and make her own way in the world. And we see how difficult that can be at times, but the way she finally finds that towards the end of the film, it's such a great film. It's just this small little gem within Scorsese's filmography that I don't think gets enough appreciation and enough love. I really recommend everybody to check this movie out. At number 8, I have Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is just a phenomenal film. This is just a phenomenal film. Robert De Niro gives a fantastic performance as Travis Bickle. This is a film that I feel like you can relate to today, especially with the character of Travis Bickle. I think so many people can relate to Travis Bickle despite not really falling into his shoes per se. The movie is also darkly funny in some ways and also just deals with a lot of interesting themes of not only that time period, but I think it relates to today as well. It's just a great showcase of 70s slow burn cinema. It has a fantastic ending, and it's just overall a very somber, perfect film. At number 7, I have The Age of Innocence. For many people, I might be putting this movie too high, but I adore this film. Ever since I watched this movie for the first time just a couple years ago, I have fallen in love with it. It is a romantic film, but is also so somber and sad and depressing. And it's just the kind of movie that I really enjoyed. There's such a great sense of detail throughout the film. The shots of the food and the plates and the art, it's all so period accurate in so many ways, and it's a haunting film about two lovers that they can't be together because of what society expects from them in this time period. I feel like if they grew up in a time period that was after this time, things would be so much better off for them. It's just such a heartbreaking film, and the soundtrack is incredibly haunting as well, and a great use of an Enya song in this period drama as well. I love this film to death. At number 8, I'm putting his most recent film, Killers of the Flower Moon, which I think is one of the most important films ever made. They did such a phenomenal job of really tooling this movie, retooling it into what it eventually became. Originally, this was going to act more like a investigative film. However, Scorsese decided to go back to the drawing board and make it much more about the Osage people. And I think that was the best decision this film could have made, because it is such a powerful film that really focuses in on the loss of Native American land, how the white man has taken that away from the people that were here before us. It's a story that is the story of America in its darkest recesses. It is epic, it's big, and it wastes none of its 3.5-hour runtime. And I think the ending of this film is so poignant, especially with that final kind of radio show at the end of the film with Martin Scorsese. It was a huge film to tackle. It was a big gamble, and I think it produced one of the greatest films of the modern era. At number 5, I have The Wolf of Wall Street, which this movie used to rank a lot higher. This was my first Martin Scorsese film I ever watched, and it's endlessly entertaining. Leo DiCaprio gives such a fun, fascinating performance, and it's a great film of showing bad people doing bad things. I think that despite me loving this film to death and thinking it is a masterpiece, I've kind of fallen back on it a little bit. And that mostly is because I think that the culture of young men that have watched this film have taken the wrong lessons from this movie, and it showcases a very toxic lifestyle that I think a lot of young men have kind of been driven towards, and this movie ends up being a celebration of that lifestyle for them. Though I feel like the movie doesn't really take a stance or anything, and it doesn't really need to. I think that it is a problem that the film, despite not focusing on anything in particular and telling you this is wrong, I think it maybe should have been a little meaner in that regard, so that we didn't have this mess of young men that are flocking to this movie, wanting to have that lifestyle, because I think it is rather dangerous. That said, it's a phenomenal movie nonetheless. It's a perfect movie. It's just that little part that kind of irks me. At number 4, I am shocked that this movie has made it this far up the list, because it is a great film, but on rewatch, I fell in love with The Aviator. This is a phenomenal movie. I think that it wastes none of its nearly 3-hour runtime. This is one of Leo DiCaprio's finest performances. The filmmaking is incredible. This is one of the best directed films, best looking films, best casted films. The stark contrast between the first half of the film and the second half of the film with the visual style is phenomenal to watch. And Cate Blanchett gives one of the most uncanny performances I have ever seen. I have never seen an actor embody a real-life person quite like how Cate Blanchett portrays Katharine Hepburn. It is a phenomenal film from beginning to end, and just so thrilling. It's a film that feels like it was made for me, and even when it kind of falls in line with biopics that are considered Wikipedia entry biopics, I feel like it's able to escape that with its incredible directing from Martin Scorsese and just the style overall. I love this film to death. I was really surprised upon rewatch, but it is one of my favorites of Scorsese's. So at number 3, I'm putting Goodfellas. This is, I think, the quintessential Martin Scorsese film. This is the film that really most people that maybe don't really know who Martin Scorsese is, they at least know Goodfellas. It was such a influential film when it was released. It is one of the greatest gangster films of all time, and it's also a cautionary tale of how power and greed can consume you. It's phenomenal. It's a precursor to things such as The Irishman and Wolf of Wall Street. I feel like it's a combination of those movies in this movie, and the performances across the board are so good. The needle drops are really entertaining. Some of the best music choices for this film. It's just a movie that came out at the right time. It is, in many ways, Martin Scorsese's masterpiece. It was at the height of his career. It's just a phenomenal film, and I understand completely why many people would rank this as his best film, because it truly is. However, there's 2 films in his entire filmography that I have not spoken about yet that mean much more to me on a deeply emotional level. And it's only if you understand me a little bit and understand where I come from in my life, why these films have such a grab on me. So I'm going to start with my number 2, and that is Silence. Silence is a difficult movie to watch, not only for its runtime and its pacing, but its subject matter as well. It's a movie that demands your attention. You need to sit down, not pay attention to anything else except for the movie right in front of you. It's a movie that focuses on religious persecution as well as what is right and what is wrong when conveying a new religion to a group of people that know nothing, have no understanding of your concept of religion. And it's so powerfully done. The performances are phenomenal, especially from Andrew Garfield, who kind of plays this priest that in many ways the film tries to portray him as Jesus in so many scenes. We see from his hair to him seeing reflections of himself to a scene literally replicating Jesus's entry into Jerusalem. It is a phenomenal, dark film that is, I think, going to be more appreciative to those that have grown up in the church, as I did. I think that when you have that kind of a background, I think you will find much more in this film than you might otherwise. It's just a very, very good film that means a lot to me. It's a powerful movie that is one of the greatest experiences I've ever had watching a movie. I have a new appreciation for this film. This is one of the greatest films ever made. One of my personal favorite films ever made as well. And then finally, at number one, we have my favorite Martin Scorsese film, The Last Temptation of Christ, which is one of the most misunderstood films of all time. It is a movie that asks a lot of you, but if you are willing to give it a chance, you will experience one of the best biblical films ever made. The film is not a retelling of the Gospels. It tells you that right from the very beginning, but it focuses on the spiritual conflict within Christ. It tries to get us to understand Jesus, to understand this religious figure in a way that most other biblical stories have not been able to convey, by making us relate to him, because Jesus in this film is human, and we see how he is tempted his entire life. So many people, I feel like, don't understand the film because they don't want to engage with it and understand what it is doing. And by the very end of the film, it is such a haunting experience. It's a beautiful film, beautiful cinematography, and one of the best scores from Peter Gabriel, who gives such life to the film, especially at the very end of the film, matched with the final line of this movie. It's one that sticks with me far after it's over. I adore this film to death. It is a masterpiece, and it needs more recognition, and I wish that people would give this movie more of a chance, because it is a powerful movie. And that, guys, is my ranking of all of Martin Scorsese's narrative films. I hope you enjoyed this. I love Martin Scorsese as a filmmaker. I think he's made some phenomenal films, movies that have really touched me on an emotional level, and just really fun movies overall. And he's a director worth celebrating and worth investing your time in. It was quite a journey going through 26 of his movies, and I think that, you know, if you are interested in Martin Scorsese, I think you should do something like this. But I want to know, what are your rankings of Martin Scorsese's movies? If you haven't seen all of them, give me your ranking of the ones that you have seen. I would very much like to know what you think of his filmography. And also, I'm going to be reviewing a few of the movies that were on this ranking because some of them are some of my favorite movies of all time, and I would very much like to talk about them in a longer video. But if there is any movie on this list that you want me to talk about that I don't end up reviewing, please let me know what movies you would want to see me review and give a little bit more context as to why I feel the way I do. And also, recommend me some other director filmographies that I can do in the future, because I want to continue doing this and looking at different filmmakers' filmographies. I think it's a lot of fun, but that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and stay positive.